The holographic broadcast flickered to life, illuminating the dark chamber of the warship Vindication with an eerie glow. A harsh, guttural voice filled the silence, echoing through the bridge. Let this be a lesson to all who defy the will of the Galactic Empire. General Adam Paul stood rigid, his fists clenched so tightly that his knuckles were bone white. His breath came in short, ragged bursts, his chest rising and falling as he watched the scene unfolding before him. His son Nathaniel was bound to a metal post in the center of a grand alien plaza, his small, frail body dwarfed by the towering spires of an empire that reveled in its dominance. The boy's face was streaked with dirt and dried blood, his arms trembling against the restraints. He did not cry. Adam felt a surge of pride amidst the agony clawing at his soul. Nathaniel had been raised to be strong, but no strength could save him now. The executioner stepped forward, a towering Valkyrie adorned in ceremonial black armor. High Marshal Zentha's amber eyes gleamed with cruel amusement as he raised a torch high above his head. The assembled alien spectators, a sea of reptilian faces, watched in silence, some with morbid fascination, others with utter indifference. "This is what becomes of those who resist us," Zent declared, his voice laced with condescension. Adam inhaled sharply, his body shaking as the torch was lowered. The flames leapt, licking at the boy's tunic, catching the fabric. The first scream that tore from Nathaniel's throat was so raw, so full of terror, that it shattered something deep inside Adam. His vision blurred, his breath caught in his throat. He lurched forward, as if he could somehow reach through the screen, could somehow stop what was already happening. Jimmy Grayson, his second in command, grabbed his shoulder, his grip firm but not unkind. "Adam." The words were drowned beneath the sound of his son's agony. Smoke curled into the sky, dark tendrils twisting in the wind. Nathaniel's small body convulsed, his screams tapering into a hoarse, pitiful whimper before silence consumed him. The fire burned on. The Valkyrie spectators turned away, the execution already forgotten. The feed cut out, leaving behind a void of darkness. For several moments, the bridge remained utterly still. Then Adam moved. With deliberate, measured steps, he turned from the now-dead screen and strode toward the ship's control panel. His hand hovered over the command console. His officers watched him, their faces grim, awaiting orders. "Target the planet," Adam said, his voice eerily calm. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken words. Jimmy stepped in front of him. "We don't have the clearance for planetary bombardment." Adam met his gaze, his expression devoid of emotion. "That was my son." Jimmy didn't flinch, but there was something unreadable in his eyes. "And if we fire, they'll brand us terrorists. The Federation won't back us." "I don't need their backing." "Think, Adam." A sharp breath, a flicker of hesitation. Then, like a dam breaking, rage surged through him, raw and unchecked. He slammed his fist against the console. "They burned a child alive. My son. And you want me to, what? Wait? Do nothing?" "No," Jimmy said quietly. "But we need to be smart about this. We make this personal, and we lose. We make this war, and we win." Adam's chest heaved. His mind screamed for action. He wanted blood, wanted to feel the life drain from Zentha's body with his own hands. But Jimmy's words settled like cold steel against his fury. War. That was the only answer. He turned back to the crew. "Get me in contact with Admiral Drayskin." A flicker of uncertainty passed across their faces. Drayskin, the head of the United Human Federation's military forces, had been a staunch advocate of diplomacy with the Empire. But diplomacy had just died screaming. It took only minutes to establish the connection. Drayskin's face appeared on the holoscreen, his aged features lined with tension. He had clearly already seen the broadcast. "We need to strike back," Adam said, without preamble. Drayskin sighed. "I understand your pain, Adam. But this was meant to provoke us. The Empire wants us to react emotionally. We cannot afford a full-scale war." "Then what do you suggest we do?" His voice was like steel. "Condemn them? Issue sanctions?" He took a step closer to the screen. "My son was just burned alive, Admiral. If we let this pass, they'll see us as weak. They will do it again. And next time, it won't just be one child. It will be 100, 1,000. Drayskin exhaled, running a hand through his graying hair. You want retribution. I understand. But if we go to war unprepared, we doom ourselves. Then give me authorization to take my own strike force, Adam pressed. I don't need the Federation's fleet, just a team of men. Let us be the ones to show them what it means to make an enemy of humanity. There was a long pause. Dreskin's eyes flickered with something unreadable before he spoke again. Unofficially, I cannot sanction this. But if certain assets were to go missing, I wouldn't be able to track them. Adam nodded. It was as much permission as he would get. The transmission ended. Jimmy exhaled slowly. You know this means we're going rogue. Adam's lips curled into something that was not quite a smile. Then it's time we reminded the galaxy why humanity was never meant to be conquered. The bridge stirred to life. Orders were shouted, commands relayed. Weapons were checked, armor donned. A crew of men, hardened soldiers who had seen war and understood its price, assembled before their general. Adam looked upon them, upon the faces of those who had chosen to stand with him. Some were fathers, others were brothers, sons. Each of them had lost something to the Empire. We do this not for revenge, he said, his voice carrying through the chamber, but for justice. For every child they've stolen from us. For every colony they've burned. We do this so that no human will ever fear the shadow of the Empire again. A chorus of determined voices rose in response. The Vindication turned from its course, vanishing into the black abyss of space. War had begun. The warship Vindication drifted through the black void of space, its engine silent, its crew waiting. A thick tension filled the air, pressing against every man aboard. No one spoke of Nathaniel. They did not have to. His death had already become something greater than grief. It was fuel. It burned in their veins, a cold fire that would not be extinguished until the debt had been paid in full. In the dimly lit war room, a circle of men stood around a holographic display, their faces illuminated in shades of blue. At the center was General Adam Paul, his presence a storm of barely contained fury. Across from him, Commander Jimmy Grayson observed the plan unfolding with calculated precision. We strike Zenith Prime first, Adam stated, his voice level, but carrying the weight of an iron decree. High Marshal Zenth is stationed there. We kill him, we send a message. Captain Dorian Voss leaned against the table, arms crossed over his armored chest. His sharp green eyes studied the display with a predator's patience. Bold. But the capital world of the Varkari Empire isn't exactly vulnerable. We're talking planetary defenses, orbital fleets, and a military presence large enough to glass an entire colony in hours. Not to mention Zenth will be surrounded by his elite guard. Adam's gaze never wavered. Then we burn their defenses before they can burn us. Sergeant Cale Stroud, a demolition expert with a reputation for turning warships into debris fields, gave a low chuckle. I like the sound of that. Jimmy folded his arms. We need a way in. The Vindication won't last long in a direct fight with an entire fleet. We need access codes, restricted flight paths, something that gives us a ghost chance of making it through their security. Dorian tapped a sequence into the holographic panel, zooming in on a small Varkari-controlled supply station orbiting a dead moon. Here, one of their outer refueling stations. Mid-tier security, manageable defenses. We hijack one of their patrol ships, forge our own clearance codes, and walk right into their system. Adam's expression remained unreadable. Then let's not waste time. There was no need for further words. Each man in the room knew what had to be done. Hours later, the Vindication emerged from the darkness of slipspace, positioning itself just outside the sensor range of the supply station. Inside the drop bay, Adam and his team suited up, securing weapons, calibrating cloaking gear, and preparing for the silent kill they were about to execute. Dorian checked his rifle's energy cell. Fast and clean. No alarms. Adam's grip on his sidearm tightened. No survivors. The dropship detached from the Vindication, cutting through the void like a phantom. The approach was flawless, unseen, unheard. They latched onto the station's hull, cutting their way inside through an auxiliary hatch. The first Valkyrie soldier never even saw them. Adam's blade was already buried in his throat before he could react. The second died just as swiftly, his body crumpling to the ground without a sound. The station's dim corridors became a hunting ground, and humanity was the apex predator. Jimmy signaled the team forward as they advanced toward the control hub. Two guards stood at the entrance, unaware that death loomed behind them. A single suppressed shot from Dorian ended one, while Cale drove his knife into the other's chest, holding him upright as he gurgled his last breath. Within minutes, they secured the station, eliminating all hostiles. The control systems were theirs. Cale grinned, cracking his knuckles. Now, let's carve up some clearance codes. It took mere moments to forge the credentials they needed. Jimmy worked swiftly, hands moving across the terminal with precise efficiency. The patrol ship was theirs now, complete with unrestricted access to Zenith Prime. Adam surveyed the bodies littering the station, his jaw tightening. Set the self-destruct. We leave no traces. Minutes later, as the human team slipped away in their stolen vessel, the supply station erupted into flames behind them, its debris scattering into the void. Disguised as an Imperial patrol ship, they cut through the layers of Valkyrie security with ease. The automated defenses of Zenith Prime allowed them to pass, the docking clearance codes flawless. The capital world was a stark contrast to the cold, silent warship they had left behind. Zenith Prime pulsed with alien life, a sprawling metropolis of towering spires, neon-lit skyways, and a sea of reptilian inhabitants moving beneath the Empire's crimson banners. The scent of foreign spices and burning fuel mixed in the air, a world thriving under the iron grip of the Valkyrie dominion. Adam and his team descended into the heart of the city, their faces obscured by dark visors, weapons concealed beneath long cloaks. Dorian's voice came through the comms. "I feel naked walking through here without shooting something." "Patience," Jimmy murmured. "We do this right, we only fire once." They maneuvered through the crowded streets, slipping between alleys and through shadowed corridors. Every step brought them closer to their target. The Imperial War Fortress loomed in the distance, its massive structure an imposing reminder of the Valkyrie's absolute rule. Inside, High Marshal Zenth sat upon his throne, oblivious to the hunters closing in. Cale glanced toward Adam. "You sure you don't want him alive for a little while?" Adam's expression was carved from stone. "No." They pushed forward, each man knowing that the next step could be their last. But they did not hesitate. There was no room for hesitation in war. The moment was near, and when it came, the wrath of humanity would be felt in full. The air inside the war fortress was thick with a scent of oil and burning incense, a grotesque mix of ritual and machinery. Towering pillars lined the grand hall, each carved with a bloodied history of the Valkyrie Empire, a testament to their conquests, their subjugations. 100 victories, 1,000 lives crushed beneath their rule. But tonight, the history carved in these stones would end in fire. Adam and his team moved through the dim corridors like wraiths, their presence unseen, their silence absolute. Every step brought them closer to the throne chamber, where High Marshal Zenth sat in the heart of his dominion. His arrogance had been his undoing. He had not fortified himself against the ghosts of those he had burned. Cale moved ahead, placing charges along the hallway junctions, fingers moving with practiced efficiency. The small explosives were designed not to level the fortress outright, yet, but to cut off escape routes, to turn the stronghold into a steel tomb. Dorian signaled a stop, his eyes narrowing as he listened. The heavy footfalls of Valkyrie guards echoed ahead. A patrol. He held up 3 fingers. Adam gave a single nod. No hesitation. The moment the first alien rounded the corner, Adam drove his knife into its throat, twisting as he pulled it free. Before the second guard could react, Dorian's silenced pistol coughed once, the shot precise. A single hole burned through the creature's skull. The third managed a sharp hiss of alarm before Jimmy caught him in a chokehold. silencing him with a quick snap of the spine. They pressed on. The throne chamber loomed ahead, a grand entrance sealed by thick doors adorned with the Empire's sigil. Kale crouched beside the control panel, working through its encryption. A low beep signaled success, and the heavy doors groaned open. Inside, High Marshal Zenth sat upon his throne of war, his scaled hands resting against the hilt of his ceremonial blade. He did not rise when they entered. He did not need to. The room was filled with his personal guard, a dozen heavily armored Varkari warriors standing like statues of death, their eyes glowing in the dim torchlight. Zenth exhaled, amused. Humans. Adam stepped forward, his rifle held at his side, not raised. He wanted this to be personal. You know why we're here. Zenth inclined his head slightly. Revenge. A predictable flaw of your species. His voice was almost pitying, as though Adam were a misguided child throwing a tantrum. Your son was an unfortunate casualty of war. Nothing more. Rage twisted through Adam like a blade. He was a child, a 10-year-old boy, murdered to make a statement. Well, consider this humanity's reply. The first explosion shook the fortress, a tremor that sent dust and debris cascading from the high ceilings. Kale had done his job well. The exits were gone. There would be no retreat. The guards moved, their weapons rising. Dorian's rifle snapped up in response, his first shot lancing through an enemy's visor before the chamber erupted into chaos. Gunfire and steel clashed as humans and Varkari tore into each other. Adam moved through the fray with brutal precision, his knife finding weak points in alien armor, his pistol spitting death with every squeeze of the trigger. Dorian fought like a ghost, moving in and out of shadows, his silencer ensuring that every shot was a whisper of finality. Kale planted another charge, a deadly insurance policy should the battle not end in their favor. Jimmy fought closest to Adam, his movements calculated, his blade carving a path through the chaos. The guards were powerful, their strength monstrous, but humans had always been something more than just flesh. They were will. They were fury. The battle ended as suddenly as it had begun. The last Varkari guard fell, gurgling his final breath as Adam drove his knife between his ribs. The chamber was silent once more, save for the shallow breaths of the victors. Zenth remained seated, his expression unreadable. He looked upon the bodies of his fallen warriors, then back at Adam, and finally he laughed. Do you truly believe this changes anything? His amber eyes glowed with something close to amusement. You think one act of vengeance will make humanity strong? You are insects to us. You burn one city, and we will burn 100 in return. You kill me, and another will take my place. Adam approached, slow and deliberate. He reached forward and gripped Zenth by the throat, hauling him to his feet. Did my son beg? Adam's voice was low, dangerous. Zenth did not answer. Adam pressed a knife to his side, twisting just enough to draw a shuddering hiss from the alien's throat. Did he? Zentha's lips curled, a defiant smirk. Adam ignited the plasma torch. The smell of burning flesh filled the chamber as High Marshal Zenth screamed. The fire consumed him the way it had consumed Nathaniel. By the time Adam let go, there was nothing left but smoldering remains. The fortress trembled again as another explosion rocked its foundations. Jimmy's voice cut through the comms. Adam, we need to move. Now. Dorian was already securing an exit, hacking into the emergency override to force open a locked corridor. Kale detonated the secondary charges, ensuring that whatever remained of Zentha's stronghold would be nothing but ash. They ran. The escape was chaos. The fortress was collapsing, alarms blaring as Varkari reinforcements scrambled in confusion. By the time they reached the exterior, the city was in flames. The humans had done more than assassinate a high marshal. They had sparked an uprising. The footage of Nathaniel's execution, stolen from the Empire's own archives, now played across Zenith Prime's communication networks for all to see. Civilians watched in horror, in disgust, in rage. The fear that had kept them compliant for so long had begun to fracture. Adam did not stop to admire the chaos. They had one mission left: escape. Their stolen patrol ship was where they left it, engines primed, ready to launch. They boarded in swift efficiency, Kale already preparing countermeasures against the planetary defenses. Then the sky darkened. Through the viewport, Adam saw them. A Valkyrie fleet, massive and overwhelming, dropping out of slipspace. The Empire had responded. A cold realization settled over him. They were trapped. Jimmy's voice was grim. They're blocking all outbound traffic. We're not getting off this planet. Adam clenched his jaw, staring at the incoming armada. The fires of Zenith Prime reflected in his eyes. We hold the line, he said. The ship's weapons powered up. The battle was not over. It had only just begun. The patrol ship shuddered as the first barrage of plasma fires seared through the sky, lighting up the horizon in violent streaks of blue and crimson. The Valkyrie fleet had arrived in force, descending like a storm of wrath, their warships blotting out the stars. Adam stood at the helm, his grip tightening around the railing as the alarms shrieked through the cockpit. "We can't outrun that blockade," Jimmy said, his voice edged with cold realism. "They have the entire system locked down." Dorian sat at the gunnery controls, his fingers dancing over the targeting interface. "Then we don't run. We fight." Kale's hands were already moving across the weapons console, diverting all power to shields and weapons. "If we're going down, we're taking some of these bastards with us." Adam exhaled, his mind racing. The mission had been a success. Zent was dead, the Empire wounded. But now they faced annihilation. No reinforcements. No Federation backup. Just a handful of human warriors against the full might of an empire. He refused to accept it. "There's another way," Adam said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We use the uprising." Outside, the city was already in open revolt. Valkyrie civilians, fueled by the images of Nathaniel's execution, had turned against their masters. Fires raged across the cityscape, and skirmishes erupted in the streets. Security forces struggled to contain the chaos. The timing was perfect. Adam leaned forward. "We hit their planetary defense grid. If we take it offline, every resistance fighter on this planet will have a chance to escape. So will we." Jimmy nodded. "The main defense hub is in the central district. If we move fast, we can take it out before they tighten their net." Dorian cracked his knuckles. "Then let's make some noise." Kale set the ship on a rapid descent toward the city, weaving through incoming fire. Anti-air cannons lit up the sky as they passed, but the patrol ship's stolen clearance codes delayed the targeting systems just long enough to slip through. The ship touched down in the ruins of an abandoned industrial sector. They disembarked immediately, moving in formation, weapons ready. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid scent of burning metal. Bodies, both Valkyrie and human sympathizers, littered the streets. They advanced through the city, weaving between cover as sporadic firefights erupted around them. The chaos worked in their favor. The Empire was struggling to contain the insurrection. Their forces spread thin. Adam led his team toward the heart of the city, toward the towering structure that housed the planetary defense systems. As they neared the compound, Dorian raised a fist, signaling a stop. He gestured to a fortified checkpoint ahead. Valkyrie soldiers stood guard, their weapons scanning the streets, unaware of the human shadows creeping toward them. Adam motioned to Jimmy and Dorian, then pointed to the far side of the checkpoint. "Flank them. Kale, plant charges on their hover tanks. We'll hit them fast." The team split up, moving with lethal precision. Adam waited for the signal, his pulse steady, his breathing controlled. Then, a sharp click over the comms. The detonation ripped through the air, sending shockwaves through the compound. The Valkyrie guards barely had time to react before gunfire rained down upon them. Dorian was the first to emerge from the smoke, his rifle cutting through the remaining enemies with merciless efficiency. Adam followed, his sidearm barking out controlled shots. The Valkyrie fell one by one, their superior numbers meaningless against the honed lethality of human warfare. Within minutes, the checkpoint was theirs. Kale worked quickly, slicing into the security panel at the entrance. "Give me 30 seconds, he muttered. Adam turned, scanning the burning skyline. In the distance, more enemy reinforcements were mobilizing, pushing toward the resistance strongholds. Time was running out. Kale cursed under his breath. They've reinforced the firewalls. This isn't going to be clean. Then make it dirty, Jimmy said, watching the streets for incoming patrols. Kale's fingers moved faster, overriding the locks with brute force. The door hissed open. No alarms. No immediate response. They moved inside. The control room was a sprawling hub of alien technology, its walls lined with holographic displays tracking planetary defenses. A handful of Varkari technicians recoiled in shock at the sight of the intruders. "Get down," Adam ordered. One technician reached for an alarm. A single shot from Dorian ended him before he could complete the motion. The others fell to their knees, hands raised. Jimmy strode forward. "We need the defense grid offline. Now." One of the captives, a young Varkari with deep-set eyes, shook his head. "You're too late. The moment you attacked, the system went into lockdown. You'll never break the encryption in time." Kale smirked. "Watch me." He pulled a data slate from his belt and plugged it into the console. The screen flickered, lines of human-coded viruses flooding the system. The Varkari technician scoffed. "You don't understand. The failsafe is hardwired into." The console sputtered, flickered, and then darkness. Kale grinned. "Failsafe my ass." Alarms blared throughout the compound. The planetary defense grid was down. Adam turned to the captives. "Leave. Run. If I see you again, you die." The Varkari did not hesitate. They fled. Jimmy tapped his comm to all resistance forces. "Airspace is clear. Evacuate now." Across the city, human sympathizers and defectors seized the opportunity, breaking through enemy lines, hijacking vessels, and fleeing the dying world. What had once been the Empire's most secure stronghold was now collapsing under the weight of its own arrogance. Adam turned back to his team. Time to go. They retraced their steps, moving swiftly through the ruined streets. As they neared their extraction point, the sky erupted with light. The human fleet had arrived. The Relentless, the Federation's most powerful dreadnought, emerged from slipspace, flanked by a formation of battlecruisers. The blockade that had once seemed impenetrable was now under siege. Dorian exhaled. "About damn time." Kale grinned. Guess Drayskin finally grew a spine. Federation fighters poured into the skies, engaging the Varkari fleet in a maelstrom of fire and metal. The once mighty armada, spread too thin by the uprising, struggled to form a counteroffensive. Adam and his team boarded their ship, lifting off just as the final detonations engulfed the defense compound. Flames licked at the sky, consuming everything the Empire had built. As they ascended, Adam looked down at the world below. Zenith Prime, burning broken. Jimmy spoke over the comms. "You did it." Adam exhaled, his voice a quiet storm. "We did." The ship broke free of the atmosphere, joining the human fleet as they unleashed their full fury upon the remnants of the Empire's forces. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it had done. It had made humanity angry, and nothing would ever be the same again.